Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. And I'm your host, Rashid. And while we wait for Scott Ritter to join us, give me 1 second with everybody until Scott joins us. I'm going to play a little clip real quick. I want to make sure that he gets another link because you know how they do this show at all times. So I'm going to play a little short thing, and I'm going to send him another link to make sure that he gets it. Okay. So give me 1 second. Let's see. Let's see if we can find one that. Matter of fact, we can find one that's very befitting. Uh, Here's Scott Ritter himself on Russia Today. So check this out.
Our countries are taking significant steps to strengthen defense security cooperation. We're modernizing command and control structures. I'm also pleased to announce that for the first time, Japan and the United States and Australia will create a network system of air, missile, and defense architecture. We're also looking forward to standing up a trilateral military exercise with Japan and the United Kingdom. And our AUKUS defense partnership with Australia and the United Kingdom is exploring how Japan can join our work in the second pillar, which focuses on advanced capabilities, including AI, autonomous systems.
The AUKUS military bloc, comprised of Australia, the UK, and the US, has also said it wants Japan to take part in its framework. That country's prime minister has, however, walked back potential direct involvement with the alliance, saying no decision has been made yet. We asked former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer Scott Ritter for his take on the prospects of more confrontation in Asia.
The United States is resentful of the fact that neither Russia nor China want to kneel before hegemonic America, that neither Russia nor China recognize the United States as the supreme authority on the global stage anymore. This is something the United States resents, and it's something that the United States is pushing back against. I think we are witnessing a race between the economic condition and the military condition. If the United States loses the economic race, I think the United States will have no choice but to cede the military race, meaning that we'll have to find a way to correct our position economically before we talk about going to war. We can't go to war based upon a fundamentally weak economic position. If the United States is able to stabilize its economic position vis-a-vis China, then we will press the military issues, believing that we have a military advantage over China. And this is a misconception, a misperception, and a mistake, and it will lead to direct conflict with China. So I think the world needs to start betting on continued Chinese economic growth and Chinese economic dominance, because only through that path will a war with America be avoided.
So we're looking at, and we're waiting for Scott to join us. Hopefully the links will work. And for my guy in Canada, yeah, we're supposed to have him on the show today, but let me tell you something. Sometimes the links are broken, and it's not by Scott himself. It's by StreamYard and YouTube or whatever. And whenever something like that happens, it really doesn't matter because we double back down the next time and get them back around. But we've interviewed Scott on this platform multiple times, 4 or 5 times on the platform. So I just wanted to let you know that, okay? And thank you. Thank you. My guy Joel is in the building also. I know Joel is in the building. So I want to go to something that he was saying. And maybe while we're talking about this, Scott will join us. And it's, I don't care what I'm talking about. When Scott comes into the booth, we'll stop immediately and bring him up on the screen, okay? I want to thank everybody who's joining us on Rumble, Odyssey, Twitch, Twitter, the Red Pill Diaries, the Red Pill Journals, and locals. Thank each and every one of you for joining us. Don't worry about how they suppress the numbers. Don't worry about that. I'm just thankful that you guys are here. From the bottom of my heart and the depth of my soul, thank you for giving me your time, because time is the most valuable commodity. It's an unrenewable commodity. So when you give your time to someone, make sure that you are receiving something equal or greater in return. That's why it's called spending your time. And that's why we want, when you spend time with us, we want to enlighten you on something. Okay. So as we wait for Scott, I want to go back to something that he was talking about the Indo. They call it the Indo-Pacific. We call it the Asia Pacific region. You know, the United States and the West. When they like to spit in the face of somebody, they'll change the words. Like they were once calling it the West Philippine Sea and all of this stuff like this. You know, the South China Sea. That's how they are trying to lambaste and browbeat China. When I was, oh, here, Scott is in the building right now. So I'm going to stop what I was talking about and I'm bringing Scott in right now. This is my guy, my friend, Scott Ritter. How's it going today, Scott?
How you doing? Sorry, I'm late. I apologize for that.
It's all good, Scott. Listen, we have this lunatic man in the White House who is not really even there. Um, where is he leading us, specifically talking about what's going on in the Middle East as a carrier group steams towards the Mediterranean?
This is a man who I think we need to be honest. He's not in control of his own faculties and he's not in control of the country. So he's somebody who's being used by other entities who fall outside of the control of the American people because we don't know who they are. And they're using him to promote their interests, not the American interests, but their interests. And the mechanism that they're opting is military power. That means that they're pushing America towards war. And it's not just towards a potential conflict in the Middle East. We see with what's going on with Ukraine, we're pushing towards a potential nuclear war with Russia. And of the two, I'm more worried about a nuclear war with Russia because that's sort of the world-ending event. And the bottom line is we are closer today to a full-scale nuclear exchange between the United States and Russia than we have been at any time in the history of the nuclear era. This is a much more dangerous situation than existed during the Cuban Missile Crisis. You know, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, we had diplomats that actually talked to each other. One of the reasons why we didn't go to war is that we were talking to each other. We were doing that diplomacy thing. You know, you've seen the movie Top Gun?
Yes.
And, you know, when Goose, you know, do that fire pilot stuff, Maverick, you know, right about the time when we Americans should be going, doing that diplomacy stuff, Mr. President, do that diplomacy stuff, you know, get us out of this, whether you like JFK or not. You know, I had a very good friend named Mr. Polk. He was on Kennedy's inner circle during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Unfortunately, he passed Bill Polk, but he passed a couple years ago. But you know, we talked a lot about that, and he said, you know, Kennedy was exactly the kind of leader America wanted at that time, somebody who could hold the military at bay, because there was a lot of pressure on them to, you know, bomb Cuba, bomb the Soviets, those dirty communists, bomb them. And Kennedy said, no, we're not doing that, because he understood the consequences. And he opted for diplomacy, and it was very much a diplomatic solution that prevented that conflict. Today, we don't have diplomacy taking place. All we have is muscle flexing. And it's a very, very dangerous situation, especially when the man who, you know, should be articulating, you know, nonviolent solutions, the president is just not there. I mean, we saw a man who isn't just in cognitive decline, he is cognitively declined. He's not capable of sustained coherence. And this is a very dangerous thing when we're talking about the potential of war, peace, you know, nuclear war, life, death. Very dangerous time. It's, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say that Donald Trump did anything great last night. I'm critical of both of these guys, but I will say that the Donald Trump that showed up last night was there mentally. You may not have liked what he was saying, but he was saying it, and he meant it, and he could defend it, and you know, which put him head and shoulders above the current commander in chief, who is just. This was an embarrassment. I put out a tweet last night I had to be careful with what I said because I was very angry with America. Very angry with America that we got to the point where 340 million Americans, and that's the two guys we got right there. That's the best we can do as a nation. That those two, you know, and I called it a political assassination because what we witnessed last night was a political assassination carried out by CNN at the behest of the Democratic Party. They know he's a disaster. They know he's a train wreck, but he's the incumbent, and it's very difficult for them politically to push him out of office. So he was set up. Last night was a 100% setup job by CNN. And you saw they were ready for it. They had a panel afterwards. Or the first thing, John King, my phone's blowing up by the, they need him gone. And everybody said, oh, he's a great man, was a great man, but he's got to go. He's got to go. It was a political assassination of Joe Biden. I'm normally against political assassinations. Last night, it wasn't just an assassination. This was a mercy killing. This was something that had to be done to save America. Not because, whoever they're going to replace is going to be better or whatever, but we need two legitimate options. I mean, they're bad options, but even if Joe Biden could think and had cognitive thought, at least we'd have two options. I'm not happy with either one of them, but at least we'd have two options. Right now, if they don't replace Biden, we know what the outcome of this election is going to be. It's going to be Donald Trump. And Donald Trump that isn't put under any pressure to reform himself, to moderate his stance, is a dangerous man for America. I would hope that if he is in campaign against a Democrat, that Donald Trump will have to soften his stance on certain issues. I'm hoping through an event we're putting together in September 28th to make the issue of preventing nuclear war a singular issue amongst at least 1 million Americans who will say we don't identify as Democrat or Republican during this election. We identify as Americans who don't want nuclear war, and the candidate that best expresses a policy on how we're going to avoid nuclear war gets our vote. And in a close race, 1 million voters who make that, suddenly you make your vote count. But it becomes moot if Biden is just this Alzheimer patient. It doesn't matter. Suddenly, none of the issues matter because there is only one choice. America should never be a nation where there's only one choice. There should be two choices so that we, the people, can put pressure on them to win our vote. Right now, the way things are going, Biden just lost his votes. Nobody who saw that last night can sit there and honestly say, that's the guy I want to be president of the United States. No matter what you think of Donald Trump, between the two of them, at least one can articulate coherent thought about something. The other one was just an embarrassment to America.
And do you think that is one reason why Bibi is coming here to try to force his hand for a regional war in North Africa, the Middle Eastern region?
There's no doubt that Benjamin Netanyahu is coming here to take advantage of the difficult political situation that Joe Biden's found himself in vis-a-vis the Middle East conflict. Even if his brain worked, and it doesn't, we saw that, but even if his brain worked, on critical swing states, the issue of Gaza is going to cost him the election unless he changes his vote. So the Israelis know that Biden's under a lot of pressure to at least be seen as trying to do the right thing for the Palestinian people. And so Netanyahu's visit's designed to make sure that, that Biden stays the course. It'll be, he's going to speak to Congress. That's the whole concept here, the indirect approach politically. But it'd be interesting if he meets with Biden and what could possibly transpire. I guess the good news is since Biden's brain dead, Bibi couldn't change anything anyways because the man's an Alzheimer's patient. No matter what you told him today, he wouldn't know about it in the next. And I'm not saying this, to be mean. I was a firefighter in my community for a number of years, and one of the jobs I did, in addition to heading up an engine company, was to drive an ambulance, and I would take EMTs and paramedics to. We have a number of old people homes. One in particular, Delmar Place, there was a number of elderly there who were in cognitive decline, and we would respond on a daily basis sometimes to bring these people to the hospital because they would be needed. I am used to coming into a room where you have a dementia patient, an Alzheimer's patient, and interacting with them to try and get them up, to get them dressed, to get them on the stretcher, to make them calm down, be comfortable, to transport them. And I know what they look like. I know how they behave. That's what I saw last night. I saw a dementia patient, and it was a very sad thing, very sad. And anybody who knows my history with Joe Biden knows I'm not a fan. I don't like him as a person. I despise him as a human being. But the Joe Biden I saw last night is a sick man. He has a disease, and you can't be angry at a person whose brain no longer functions properly. Just like you can't be angry at the Alzheimer's patients that you transport. I remember talking to families. I mean, it was very sad because the family members would be there. They'd have to make a decision about transporting, et cetera. And then you talk to them afterwards, and they said, well, that's not my father. My father was a great man. My father was this, that, and the other thing. Or my mother was this wonderful person, this who did that. The person you're seeing there, that's not my mother. That's not, I don't want you to think that's who she was. Well, it's who she is now. It's because the brain overwork. But, they're right. The person that's there is not who they were, not who they were at one time, not the person that defined them. It's somebody else. Joe Biden is somebody else today. That's the reality.
Do you think because he's so not there anymore that Victoria Nuland and the whole crew are the ones pushing the policy and the aggressive stance towards Russia? Because it seems like every time she says something, within weeks or months, the United States is pushing that policy towards Russia.
There is, even when his brain worked, I remember, he ran on a platform when it comes to the issue that I'm really concerned about, nuclear war, nuclear weapons. He ran on a platform back in 2020 that said, if I'm elected, America will walk away from its current nuclear posture that's based upon the premise of preemption, and we will reassume what we call the sole use doctrine, that the only reason nuclear weapons exist is as a deterrent to prevent other nations from using nuclear weapons against us. That the only way we will use nuclear weapons is if we are attacked with nuclear weapons, and then our response will be overwhelming. And the fact that it's an overwhelming response and the horrors that will be brought about it should deter people from attacking us. Okay, if you're going to have nuclear weapons, that's a legitimate thing, I guess. I'd prefer, once you put that in place, then to say, now, rather than being ready to kill each other, let's bring it down and down and down so we don't have to worry about killing each other. But that's the policy he said he ran on. That's a supportable policy. But 2 years ago, I attended a reunion of, arms control inspectors like myself who were involved in the actual elimination of nuclear weapons, and the negotiators, everybody involved in the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty came together for a reunion. And the Biden administration sent a senior arms control official who asked to remain anonymous. And there was a question and answer period. And this arms control official, who, frankly speaking, when you look at their resume, you're like, well, okay, how'd you get here? This person was being asked questions by people whose resume said nothing but arms control, people who not only theorized about it, but did it and were the first to do it, who wrote the book. And one of the questions asked is, why did the president not fulfill his promise? And the answer was, well, the interagency wasn't ready for it. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute. We're all looking at each other going, the interagency. Now, the interagency, you speak of, when I was involved in all this, we had something we call the interagency process. And what that is, it's how you make policy. The executive has a policy that they want to be implemented, but it has to be considered by the agencies involved. And so the National Security Council will create an interagency working group that brings people from the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, Department of State, Department of Treasury, and they all come together and they say the president wants to do X, Y, and Z, and then they come up with the policy, and then they brief it to the National Security Council, who then takes it to the president, and they work it out. It's a process, the interagency process. The people in the interagency working group report to, cabinet heads who were nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. So you see, there's this democracy thing going on here, where we, the people, actually count, because the senators that are confirming are people we voted for, and the president who's overseeing is somebody we voted for. We know all this. Nobody voted for the interagency, and yet now the interagency is a standalone thing. The interagency wasn't ready for it. What do you mean? The interagency should be fired then. I mean, if I'm the president of the United States, I'm the executive, and I turn around and I say, this is the policy I want, if they come back, it'd be one thing if they said, Mr. President, we're doing a process and we have disagreement with the Department of Defense and all this stuff, and we'd like to talk to you about this so we can best come up. That's the process. That's okay. But the interagency is not a standalone entity that gets to tell the executive, we're not ready for this. Well, then you don't exist anymore. That should have been the answer from the president. You're fired. Like Donald Trump said, you haven't fired anybody, Joe. You haven't fired anybody. The interagency wasn't ready for it, which tells you something, that now there's this unelected entity in Washington, D.C. called the interagency. Now, we can call it other things. We can call it the establishment, the swamp. We can call it the deep state. It's an unelected power base that's in control. And they've been there for some time now. This isn't unique to the Biden administration. Vladimir Putin sort of mocked it a while back when he talked about, every president runs and says they're going to do this, that, and the other thing. And then once they become president, men in a dark suit sit down with him and tell him the reality. And suddenly he changes his mind because you can't go against the establishment. This is disturbing. It's one thing if we have a president who has his cognitive abilities intact. He can push back and wrestle the establishment, work with the establishment, not fight the establishment, whatever you want to say, but at least he's there doing something. But when you have a president who is literally brain dead, teetering along, have to be, held by Joe Biden and brought in and have people whisper in his ear, hold a card that tells him what to say. Who wrote that? Who wrote the card? Mm-hmm. The president didn't write the card. The president's being handed talking points from people who are right. Who wrote the card? Based upon what instructions? What's the foundational principles behind the words on the card that the president's now saying and doesn't even understand what he's saying? This is the problem. This is the danger right now. So we don't know who's writing the card. We don't know who's doing it. They weren't picked by us. They're just doing it. And this is what makes the current situation very, very dangerous. If Donald Trump was the president, I may not support the policies, but at least I know who to blame. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. And if there's establishment, we saw that the establishment sabotaged him on North Korea. At least I can turn to Trump and say, shame on you, because your brain still works. You gave in to the establishment. You were supposed to drain the swamp, but the swamp drained you. And Trump has no defense because his brain works. You can hold him to account. What are you supposed to do with Joe right now? Joe, you're wrong. Talking points. At the time, you're full of malarkey. Come on, man. That's not how this country's supposed to operate.
Yeah.
And I don't like to make fun. I apologize for that. I apologize for that because, again, I hate the man. I hate Joe Biden with a passion. But that's not nice what I just did. So I apologize because he's not the man he was. If he was the man he was, I'd make fun of him 6 ways from Sunday. I don't like him. Today, he's a sick man, and you can't make fun of sick people. I apologize for that. That wasn't right for me to do.
Well, where are we in this when it comes to the Ukrainian war and the constant provocations against Russia. Where does everything stand right now? Will Russia retaliate against the deliberate bombing of its territory? Where are we headed? It looks like we're headed for war.
Well, we are at war. What do you mean headed for war? We're at war. America is at war with Russia. We've been at war for some time now. We tried to disguise it by using proxies and things of that nature. But as the Russians just said, everybody should know that the Russians called in the American ambassador after the attack in Sevastopol, which killed 5 children. They just buried a 2-year-old girl yesterday. 2-year-old girl, enemy of America, and told the ambassador, you attacked us. We blame you, and we will hold you to account. We are going to retaliate against you. And she left in a panic, and she called back to the State Department. There was an emergency meeting at the Security Council, and Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, immediately gets on the phone, hasn't done this in a while, and calls up the new Russian Minister of Defense, Belousov. We got to talk, man. We got to talk. And Belousov, according to readout, said, well, thank you. We need to have open line communication, but we blame you. You did it. You attacked us, and we're going to hold you to account. America's in a panic right now, literally in a panic, because we don't know what the Russians are going to do, but they're going to do something. We're at war. We're at war. And we're in a situation where both sides have lowered the threshold for the use of nuclear weapons. So if the Russians retaliate and it crosses our red line, then we will have to counter retaliate. And next thing you know, you have an out of control escalation of events that leads to nuclear weapons being used. Russia's not bluffing on this one. And so again, all the Americans enjoying the summer right now, are you ready to die? Have you made vacation plans? I know August is a nice month. Lots of people like to go on vacation in August. Do you want to go on vacation in August? Because you may not make it to vacation in August. The world may end today, tomorrow, this week, sometime in July. Is this what you want? Do you really? I mean, how many Americans wake up every morning going, if we don't defend Ukraine, it's all over. Look around us. It's going to end. It's going to end. Yeah. The Russians are going to parachute in. It's going to be Red Dawn. They're coming. They're not coming, guys. The Russians aren't coming. They're not going to Poland. I mean, you saw the president last night. You know, all right, go. I got to stop that. They're going to go into Poland, he said. What's going to stop? They're not going into Poland, Mr. President. They're not. You have no evidence of this. None whatsoever. All of the evidence points that this is a conflict that Russia wants to limit to Ukraine. You're making up Poland. You're making up the Baltics because you need to intimidate NATO into spending hundreds of billions of dollars to build a military to make it relevant. That's it. It's all a political game being played. Russia poses a threat to nobody. This war could end today if we just let it end, but we won't let it end. So again, I want to ask the American people, especially you people out there that put the Ukrainian flag in your social media thing. I'm such a good person. I got a Ukrainian flag there. Not an American flag, even though I'm an American. I got a Ukrainian flag. Why? When you wake up in the morning, what is it about your community that gets better when Ukraine wins? Nothing. Ukraine has nothing to do with your future. You're just one of these feel-good people that's made this an issue because you think it's the hip thing to do. You're ignorant about Ukraine. You're ignorant about Russia. You're ignorant about America. And yet, by putting that flag up there, you empower people politically to posture themselves with Russia in a way that's going to end with a nuclear war. A nuclear war. The game-ending kind. Life-terminating kind. Not a joke. Scott, I always get this, Rishi. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm making fun of the people, but Scott, we bombed Hiroshima, but it's still a city today. Nuclear war isn't as dangerous as you think it is. Yeah, we killed a couple thousand people, but it's still there. They're living in it. Hey, moron, who asked that question? Again, I shouldn't say that because I always say that the only bad question is the question you don't ask. The only stupid question is the one you don't ask. How big was the bomb we dropped on Hiroshima? Jeopardy theme song. 12 to 20 kilotons. Okay, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 12 to 20 kilotons. The average size of a Minuteman III warhead that will impact a Russian city is how big? 150 kilotons. So let's call it 15 kilotons in Hiroshima. It hits, blows up, it creates that vacuum that creates the vortex, sucks the Earth out, injects it into the atmosphere. That's 15 kilotons. All right, now 150 kilotons in on. I'm just a simple Marine, guys, but that's 10 times bigger than 15. Okay, but now, do you know how many 150 kiloton warheads we send per target? No, you don't, unless you've been part of the war plan. It's about 6. So yeah, again, I'm just a simple Marine, but 6 times 150 is, I think, just short of 1 megaton. Off, because it's overkill, baby. We're in the modern age. We're going to overkill. So 6 go off, you got a megaton going up. Now, we're going to hit 400 targets. Do you suddenly see what I'm talking about here, ladies and gentlemen, how stupid it is when you say, well, Hiroshima and Nagasaki life still exists. They weren't hit with 650 kiloton warheads, and 400 cities in Japan weren't hit simultaneously. You do understand that now we're talking about the injection of highly radioactive material into the atmosphere, and it will spread around the world. There will be nuclear winter. The sun will disappear, and then the radiation will come down on you, and you will all die. That's the reality. So kindly, for all the people out there who pretend that because of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, nuclear war survival, shut up. And I mean that with all sincerity, because your ignorance is going to kill not only you. I don't really care if you're ignorant, you want to die, but I don't want you to take me with it. I don't want you to take my family. I don't want you to take my friends. So shut up until you become informed about this kind of stuff.
Well, Scott, and I know time is limited. I want to get a couple more questions in. One, why has Putin been so restrained? And a lot of people are saying that the U.S. and the West is taking his restraint as a weakness. Is pressure on him in the Kremlin to act?
There's considerable pressure on him, and he's admitted this. He in his recent discussions in St. Petersburg and afterwards, he said, look, I have a general staff, I have a military that have put up plans. They're telling me they can win the war right now. But their plans, if I do it, will kill a lot of people. And I don't want to kill a lot of people, especially I don't want to kill a lot of Russians. And we're not going to use tactics that indiscriminately kill civilians. We're not the Ukrainians. We're not the Americans. We're Russians. And also from Putin's perspective, you're looking at it going, what's the rush? If our goal is the demilitarization of Ukraine, and we're killing Ukrainians at a rate of between 10 to 1, 5 to 1 advantage Russia, what are we doing wrong? So, why don't we just continue doing what we're doing, knowing that ultimately the outcome is that Ukraine will bleed to death, because that's what's happening. Even Zelensky recognized it yesterday. He came out and he said, we have no choice but to find a peaceful outcome because we can't keep doing this. Russia can. That's the beauty of it. The other thing is economically. I mean, in order for Putin to change his approach, there has to be pressures placed on him that justify the change. For instance, if I'm briefing the president, Mr. President, you said that our goal was to demilitarize Ukraine. Every day we get stronger, Ukraine gets weaker. This is bad, Mr. President. We need to change this. You think he's going to listen to me? He's going to say, no, you just, that's what we want. Mr. President, because of sanctions, their economies are getting weaker. Our economies are getting stronger. We need to change this, Mr. President. Putin's going to be like, no. We're getting stronger every day. They're getting weaker. All we need to do is stay the course and understand that every day goes by, advantages accrue to Russia. Russia's defense industry is expanding and becoming more modernized. They just entered into a new arrangement with North Korea that's now going to integrate the North Korean defense industry into a collective model. Russia's going to benefit from that, makes it stronger. Russia's hosting BRICS in October. This whole new Eurasian economic and security confederation that's coming together makes Russia stronger, more relevant. There's no downside to this conflict except for the fact that it is killing a lot of Russians, and eventually it needs to come to an end. But Russia has shown that it's willing to pay the price, make the sacrifice to defeat an existential threat to its existence, which is what Ukraine joining NATO would be. So Russia's willing to do what's necessary to prevent that outcome. But meanwhile, the plans that they're using to prevail in Ukraine, and they are prevailing, also have the added benefit of making them economically more powerful, militarily more powerful. Russia's getting stronger. It's not me saying this. General Cavoli, the commander of American forces in Europe, said the Russian military has just become stronger. It's bigger, better equipped. Every day that goes by, they're getting stronger. We're getting weaker. So that's it. What do I think about North Korea joining Russia and Ukraine? First of all, let's, if you're going to ask that question, understand if they're not joining Russia and Ukraine. That's not what's happening. They're sending engineer troops because Ukraine, like the Soviet Union at the time, the construction people, the stroybots, the construction battalions are military. But when I was in Vodkinsk as a weapons inspector, the construction bureau made use of these construction battalions to build civilian infrastructure. Right now, you have a lot of places inside the Donbass and Donetsk, Lugansk, and Kherson, Zaporizhia that have been destroyed because of the war. The city of Mariupol is an example of that. What North Korea is committed to is providing construction battalions that will be used by Russia to reconstruct the areas that have been destroyed, to more rapidly bring them into the fold of the Russian Federation with a high standard of living. That's part of the cooperation that's taking place. But these aren't North Korean troops that are going to the front lines to fight. These are construction troops that are going to assist with the reconstruction of the places that were destroyed and damaged by the war. And what do I think of it? I think it's great.
I wanted to ask you something along that line. Now, we know that Vladimir Putin visited Pyongyang and talked with Kim Jong-un, and they signed a strategic cooperation agreement where they would be coming to each other's defense in war. Now, isn't that a backdoor alliance with China? Because China has had that exact agreement with North Korea since the Korean War, where China was supposed to come to North Korea's aid. So if China has that agreement with North Korea and Russia has that agreement with North Korea, wouldn't that mean that all three of them have that agreement with each other?
The thing about the Chinese-North Korean agreement is that it has frayed over time. And China has to look out for China's interests. And China's interests have, over the course of the last decade, gravitated away from, talking about conflict on the Korean Peninsula to a global program, the Belts and Roads Initiative, of global economic success / dominance. They're building, supply chains, getting themselves entrenched in Africa, Asia, elsewhere. That's the Chinese approach. In order to do that, you need to peacefully coexist with the West. While they're competing with the West, they're not seeking to destroy the West. They're seeking to work with the West because they need the West. The key to China's success is to have a Western consumer market that can consume the goods that China is producing. So you don't want to destroy that which keeps you alive. It has to be a mutually beneficial relationship. And so China has, over the decades, lessened its enthusiasm for supporting North Korea. It's been to the detriment of North Korea. What Russia did is step in and say, well, China can do what they want to do, but there ain't no ifs, ands, or buts about us. We're on, Team Korea. What was that movie about the vampires in Seattle? Where you had one guy was Team Vampire, the other guy's Team Werewolf. You had the t-shirts. Russia's basically put on Team North Korea. We're on Team North Korea. That's it, man. We're picking our fight here. It's not an alliance. Kim Jong-un is calling it an alliance. Russia's not. It's not Article 5 of the NATO charter, but it is a a commitment that, because of its nebulous nature, requires whoever might consider a conflict with North Korea to understand that they have to be prepared simultaneously to go to war against Russia. And if you're Japan, South Korea, and the United States, you're going, well, we didn't plan that. We're not ready. So it disrupts everything. It's one of the most genius moves in modern geopolitical history. It will go down as one of the most significant state visits of this century. Going to North Korea and committing to North Korea like that disrupts the Western plans for continued hegemony like you wouldn't believe. And it just goes to show that Vladimir Putin is operating on a different plane altogether than his Western counterparts.
These last two questions. One, Scott, where do you think this, and when do you think this ends, or when do you think Russia starts putting speed behind what it's doing in Ukraine? Because now you have not only a desperate Ukraine, but you have a desperate and almost defeated NATO. And with them being defeated in Ukraine, it shows their irrelevance to the world. And so they can't mask all of this funding. Don't you think that would push them into the war?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to come up with an analogy here. I like to play basketball. I enjoy playing basketball. But right now my knees don't work. My dribble's off. My jump game is non-existent. My stamina, you're running on the court, I'd be like dead man walking after like a couple rotations. And you're saying that I'm going to push you to make me go on the basketball court. And you're like, go on the basketball court, man. I'll watch you die. Because that's what would happen if today I went on the basketball court. It would be as ugly as it can be. To say push NATO into war, with what? What is NATO going to go to war with? They don't have a military capable of sustained high-intensity conflict. It doesn't exist. Germany doesn't have it. France doesn't have it. The United States doesn't have it. Nobody has it. In order to get it, they're going to have to rebuild. That's one of the things they're going to be talking about in the NATO summit. We got to rebuild. With what? Well, you got to put a lot of money down on that. Germany just said, we can't even afford to keep Ukrainian refugees. We don't have any money. But NATO now wants us to spend hundreds of billions of euros to rebuild the German military. Okay, let's say we printed that money. What are we going to rebuild it with? A German industry that no longer exists because it's gone out of business because of sanctions. France can build all sorts of Caesar artillery pieces as long as their steel factories are working, but they're not, because steel factories require forges that require gas to operate the forge to make the steel. They can't afford the gas. The plants are shut down. But even if they built the damn thing, they can't put tires on it because the Michelin factory that produces the tire is out of business. Europe doesn't work. Europe is deindustrialized. And so that's the reality of these morons are coming together going, NATO, NATO, NATO. And I'm like, go on the basketball court, dude, go. I want to watch you play basketball with your two busted knees. I want to watch you run up and down the court against a guy that's been doing cardio for the last 2.5 years, and you've been sitting on the couch eating donuts, and now you think you're going to go up there and run back and forth with them. After first couple fast breaks, you're going to be puking middle of the court. That's the reality of NATO going forward. This is a frickin' joke. Excuse my language. It's a tragic joke. The only thing NATO has is nuclear weapons, and those are American nuclear weapons, which now we come back to when I talk about why we have to change the person in the White House today. Because when you start talking about nuclear weapons, you need to be 100% in control of this, so you don't do anything stupid that ends all of that. I probably never dunked. You ever see that movie, White Men Can't Jump?
With Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes.
On my best day, I could get the ball up to where I got it at the midpoint on the rim. And I could never push it over. So I'd come up, boom, there goes the ball. That was on my best. Today, the rim's safe. It's going to be complete wish. I'll get all net, and I don't even try. Yeah.
So last question, Scott. Do you think that America will continue, knowing what you just said, do you think that the American empire, the NATO war machine, will continue to escalate? Because that's all they do is escalate.
But again, you got to have something to escalate with. I mean, I can talk a great game. You've seen the guys playing basketball. I got you, man. You don't stand a chance. I'm going to be on you like white on rice. Talk all you want. Get on the court. Ball in, dunk, slam, bam, boom, boom. You're done. You play those games. Half court, play to 7, and next thing you know, 7-0. You're done. That's what NATO is. NATO is the 0. They can't even get on the court. It's they have a Secretary General, Mark Rutte, that just was nominated. He'll come in on October. I actually think he may be the last Secretary General NATO ever has. I don't think NATO survives this. I don't think NATO walks away from this. I think this is going. This summit is going to expose the fundamental and fatal weaknesses of NATO, and at some point in time, Europe. Look, the debate last night sort of seals what I was saying. If Donald Trump becomes president, NATO doesn't survive.
Does Russia know that?
They're not stupid. But I think Russia's also learned that politically it's best to shut up about things that, Russia doesn't need a debate in the United States and the West about Russian interference. Russia's not interfering. Things are happening. There's an old saying, when the enemy's doing what you want them to do, let them do it, baby. It's like, wait a minute. You mean you're going to jump off the cliff and kill yourself?
Yeah.
Let me get in the way. And so Russia's looking at NATO going, continue. So it's, I think NATO's literally on the way out. I could be wrong. I could be wrong about a lot of things. Analysis is based upon the evidence that's at play. But when you look at the economic health of NATO, you look at the political divisions that exist within the European NATO, and you look at the fact. Sorry, I'm reading some of your comments that are just basically. There you go. But the fact is, if Trump becomes president, the continued existence of, and NATO knows this. I mean, they know that if he becomes president, their continued survivability is problematic.
Scott, man, once again, thank you for joining us, for giving your time, because, man, you are the busiest man on YouTube. I really appreciate it, Scott.
Well, thanks for having me, and I'm glad we got back in contact. I was just, I was doing all that traveling stuff, but I mean, you can thank the State Department because they took my passport. I'm home, and because I'm home, I got time. So, I think you were behind it. I'm going to blame you.
Well, Scott, before they did that to you, a week before they did that to you, I was on with Larry Johnson, and he was, and YouTube, they took most of my subscribers. They suspended, they took down my posts, everything. They suspended me, and Larry, that's the State Department. And it just so happened the next week, the State Department got you. And I was like, wow, this is crazy.
Well, it's amazing because there's I don't know if you know her, Fiorella Isabella. She's a reporter for RT. She used to work with on the conversation couch with boy, I make fun of Joe Biden, and here I am. Memory gone. But I did an interview with her last week, I think, and it got up to 20,000 views, which I guess in YouTube world's okay. And then they just suspended her channel without warning. They just shut it down. And the only thing it was the interview. I I did with her. So they're clearly afraid of the message that you and I are trying to put out there. They're afraid of the processes that we encourage to, get people to think. Apparently, the State Department fears the empowered American citizen, which is all the reason why broadcasts like yours should be supported by everybody. So I'll continue to support you, and I encourage everybody watching you to support you because, you're speaking truth to power, and that's the most powerful weapon there is.
Thank you, my friend, and be safe. I'll send you a copy of this in a few minutes. Be blessed.
Okay.
Scott. All right. Everybody, we just had the man of the hour, Mr. Scott Ritter, on our broadcast. Listen, hit the like. Please subscribe. Please share. We have a whole bunch of people coming on. We have Kiji Noy coming back on as soon as he can make it work in his schedule. We have Tariq, Amir, the journalist out of Istanbul. He'll be coming back on soon. We have some more surprises for you coming on the platform. Hit the like button, share, and subscribe. Before I go off there, I do want to say this, though, because this is funny to me. And most of you won't get this, but hey, Mom, I know you're watching this. I got to share something with you real quick. So this is your grandson doing this. He's trying to beat me to saying that your baby boy loves you more than life. Look what he put up here, Mom. I know you're going to be laughing. Hey, listen, for everybody, my son, he is a Nana's boy. And I mean, he is crazy about my mom. He doesn't want anybody sitting next to her, talking to her long or anything. She's my Nana and all that stuff. So he put that up there, and I know my mom is chuckling. So everybody, listen. I hope that you received the wealth of information from Scott. We'll have him back on the program whenever he has more time. I just wanted to just pick his brain a minute, for you all to see different perspectives than what the mainstream media is giving you. We're going to have more of this. Join us on our next program. We might go back live later on today. If not, we'll be live tomorrow. The reason I wasn't live most of the week is my oldest son turned 29, and we were celebrating his birthday. On that note, I go out the same way we came in, with love in our heart for each and every one of you. Know that I love you if you love truth, but know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that God has for you. Always put him first, second, and third. It will always pale in comparison to the love that God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. Hey, Mama, your real baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. We're out of here. Peace.